Okay, let's do it later.
Well, good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. Now, we have heard from the politicians on all of today's top stories, and now it is your turn. We are live and we are ready to hear from you. This is Raw Politics, your call. All right, we have a lot to ask you today. 3 questions as always, and here is what we are going to be talking about tonight.
If you knew about something illegal happening in your company, would you blow the whistle? EU lawmakers just passed a law that would protect people who speak out, such as safeguards against retaliation and intimidation. Proponents are celebrating. But what about WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange? He published classified US military documents. Now he's in jail in the UK and facing criminal charges in America. Would you be a whistleblower? Left out. Spain's far-right party has been banned from participating in the country's only confirmed television election debate. The host network invited them after their strong performance in last year's regional elections. But the electoral board said no because they don't hold any seats in the national parliament. So how can new parties compete with the establishment? Does Vox deserve a place in the debate? From divisions over Brexit to populist parties gaining ground in local elections, it would be easy to assume voters pick their tribes and that this trend is spreading through Europe ahead of May's elections. But a new study says tribal politics in Europe is just a myth, that EU voters haven't picked their sides. What do you think? Is European politics becoming less tribal? We want your opinion. Would you be a whistleblower? Does Vox deserve a place in the debate? Is European politics becoming less tribal?
Well, you know what to do. Our lines are open. You can call us at 00800 333 002, and you can see our team. They are ready to take your calls. You can also get in touch with us at rawpaul@euronews.com, and we are live on Twitter and Facebook, and you can join the debate there using the hashtag #RawPolitics. All right, joining us tonight on this debate, we have 2 of our MEPs here. Which we had in our previous program earlier. So we have Indrek from the Greens Party, Greens EFA Party, and we have Mia Petra from the Greens Party.
No, S&D.
The S&D, Socialists and Democrats Group, excuse me. All right, so let's start with, before we get to the debate that we started earlier already in the Raw Politics show, let's get all the latest headlines from our team in Lyon with the latest update.
Good evening to you, Tessa. Yes, these are our top stories. France has announced it will hold an international competition for architects to recreate the spire of Notre Dame that was destroyed in the fire that swept through the cathedral on Monday. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe says the aim of the contest is to give the cathedral a spire adapted to the techniques and challenges of our times. He also dismissed critics who claim that that President Emmanuel Macron's pledge to rebuild Notre Dame within the next 5 years is not realistic. The European Union says it will defend itself in court if the US tries to sanction firms doing business in Cuba. The statement comes after the Trump administration announced that it will end a decades-long bar on litigation against foreign firms operating in the Caribbean nation. Brussels says the move is contrary to international law. And at least 7 people are dead after rockets hit a residential neighborhood of the Libyan capital Tripoli. It's the worst attack on a civilian area since the start of General Khalifa Haftar's 2-week campaign to seize the city from the UN-backed government. Divisions within the international community are complicating calls for a ceasefire. And those are our top stories. Now, back over to you, Tessa.
All right, thank you for that, Isabel, and our team in Lyon. You know what to do. All the information is on your screen, so do get in touch with us. Again, I'll repeat the phone number. It's 00800 333 7002. And just to recap the questions that we're asking you tonight. First question, would you be a whistleblower? So we had that legislation that was passed here at the European Parliament on the whistleblower protection law. It was approved with a big majority here at the Parliament. Second question we're asking you, does Vox deserve a place in the debate. We're talking about the Vox party in Spain because they were banned from a televised debate because the electoral board said they did not meet the electoral requirement to be part of that debate. But it begs the question, really, what kind of message is this sending? And their supporters are clearly very upset and angry with this. And they have been making headway in local elections in Andalusia there. And the third question we're asking you is European politics becoming less tribal? In fact, this is based on a study by the European Council on Foreign Relations, and they found that there were 5 myths that they listed there. The first one they said is that European politics is in fact not, becoming less tribal. So the myth there is that it's becoming more tribal. So what we're asking you is these 3 questions. Do call us and let us know what you think. Join in on the debate on this program, and all the information is on your screen. I'm already waiting for your comments on our hashtag. All right, let's get to our MEPs. Mia Petra Kumpula-Natri, what do you think about so we have the whistleblower protection passed, and this is to protect anyone who wishes to blow the whistle in the financial industry especially, and the healthcare sector, the public sector. Is this a protection for all the good guys? Are whistleblowers all good guys, I think is the question I want to ask.
Yes, I think I've been following quite tightly what the trade unions were working on the issue and asking Europe to deliver. As also sometimes you are a worker, and then if you see something anti-EU law, as it now states in the directive, you were of course punished by your employer rather than be thanked. So that was the protection was needed. So of course we have the big scandals of tax evasion or something very like big cases, very popular. But then at the same time, it might be something on the lower level in the like a normal life that you see that your working place is cheating on the nurses, how many nurses there are, or they are cheating, reporting something on the health system, that you have a law that how you have to protect the patient or elderly care, and then you don't obey the law, and then they can also give out the opinion or what they see when it's breaking the laws.
All right, we'd like to know what you think. I mean, would you be a whistleblower knowing that you will be protected by the law, by this new law, this new directive? Like if you were to come out, and you don't have to report to your company, you can go straight to the authorities or to the media, in fact, to get your stories known. So what about you, Indrek? What do you think about, whistleblowers? Are they all good guys?
Well, I think the Chinese proverb says that if you see a fraud and don't call it fraud, you are a fraud. So whistleblowing is a moral imperative in a way. But of course, in human interactions, the situations might be seen differently, perceived differently, and we need always to give a protection to a weaker side. And in that sense, I think it's a necessary step forward.
Is intention important here? I mean, we had the discussion earlier that there are different reasons. Maybe some people might blow the whistle. I was talking to Antoine Delfour. He was the whistleblower for LuxLeaks, and he said he just had a very strong conviction that he had to report what was going on. But even he points out that the intention is not the same for everybody.
I can agree with that as well. But the background is that I've spent half of my life in the Soviet Union, where whistleblowing in Russian was called being a kozyol, which means a goat, and it was basically death penalty.
It was seen as a betrayal as well.
Yeah, it is more than betrayal.
Okay.
And it's like a sort of mafia style of handling this issue. So you didn't have any rights to go against the system. But the crucial thing is that, okay, you blow your whistle, and then we discuss and see whether rules were applied, whether you were right or wrong. And that is the period in which a whistleblower should be given all sort of protection.
All right, do you think that by having this law, it can act as a deterrent? Like if companies know that now there will be more protection for whistleblowers, is this going to be a deterrent, or are they just going to get better at hiding what they're doing?
I hope this will prevent, of course, misuse of any loopholes or holes in the legislation, because this is the idea of the legislation. The idea never is to cause problems, but to avoid problems. So let's see how much this will work. Of course, we know that when very big money is talked, and then you really try to use the whole global freedom of movement of money, if you then plan a lot, but then you always know that there are single people using the machines, pushing the button. So if we get the good guys, then say that we won't do it. So we hope this will
All right,
help.
I'll just read a comment from Alberto Alemano. He's saying that today the adoption of the first EU-wide protection for whistleblowers by the outgoing EU Parliament, it's one of the best illustrations of a responsive EU to citizens' demands and societal needs. I mean, not everybody would have. I mean, not everybody would have the same opinion, I would say, on what whistleblowing is. Let's bring in the Julian Assange case, because this has been in the news this week. Some people would call him a whistleblower. Some would say he's a traitor, or he has betrayed his country. So he has crossed the line on what is acceptable. What do you think, Indra?
Well, I think this is the most well-known case, and of course what he did was probably at the time he did it damaging to certain countries' security interests or something like that, and it can be criticized because you don't play with matches in the dry forest. But on the other hand, I think he had the right to act as he did. But the recent events, I must say, prove that he is not a good person. He's not a good whistleblower. If a man doesn't clean after his cat in Lenin Moreno's embassy, he should be extradited.
All right, we are asking you, what do you think? Would you become a whistleblower knowing that you will be protected? Again, I was speaking to Antoine Deltour earlier, and he said that he didn't even think of the consequences. I wonder if this is what goes through minds of whistleblowers, if you don't even think of the consequences.
But you should think also.
Okay, expand on that. You mean you should think of the consequences?
Because it's not only about you and the company or the organization you are in. It might have much broader consequences. And when you blow a whistle on something very sensitive, let's say on nuclear power stations, some kind of codes which can be then misused by somebody else, you better consider what you're doing, first of all. But I look at the whistleblowing in terms of whether we play by rules or we cheat. And this is a very important aspect. And in that case, if somebody is a cheat, you should call it a cheat.
Now, somebody just wrote a comment here, Baba Yaga, who said the Maltese journalist Daphne Galizia was assassinated by a car bomb for exposing corruption. The European Parliament gave Assange the award named for her. Well, that's someone's opinion on who deserved it more in terms of, she was blowing the whistle, she was investigating into this. So again, there is that division on especially a divisive figure like Assange, and where do you draw the line on what is whistleblowing and what is, betraying a company, as you say, and not looking at the consequences of your actions?
I think it's hard to take the position of the law court, but then, as I was saying, this is also the very rude like in the normal working place as well, that if you work in the bank or if you are working in the big bank and still you see what's happening, it's now protected. On the Assange case, or very something new, that was in the end we know now much more than we would know without his acting. So that is also a very special case. I would love to see this as this legislation now on the protecting whistleblowers more on the regular life, that people can feel safe, that they have someone to report, or they can be safeguarded if there's reveal of fraud.
Right. And keep your comments coming, because and use the hashtag raw politics. I am on it and was seeing the stuff that you were writing there, and also on Facebook and on Twitter. And of course, you have the phone number on your screen, and send us an email. So on this, when whistleblowers put this out, I mean, in this law in particular, it is on financial institutions. We had LuxLeaks, and then the Panama Papers came along, and are there a lot more to be blown the whistle on in Europe? I asked this again to the whistleblower earlier, Antoine Deltour. Are there a lot more things in Europe you think that the whistle needs to be blown on? Seeing what you see as a politician.
Well, you should always suspect that there are more than meets the eye. But I honestly hope that that in general our systems are well designed. Our legislation is quite fair, and it's not a sort of 8 hours per day job to blow a whistle. We operate quite normally in many cases. Yeah, indeed, when you mentioned the banking sector, I would mention also that in the Commission's brief, for instance, it says that for EU institutions, the staff regulations is enough.
All right, well, there you go. So it encompasses a lot more. All right, just to remind our viewers, you can call in, get in touch with us. All the information is on your screen. So the questions that we are asking you, would you be a whistleblower? If you knew now that there's a more protection for whistleblowers, the EU just passed that law, would you be willing to be a whistleblower? Second, does Vox deserve a place in the debate? This is Vox, the party in Spain, because they were banned from a televised debate because of electoral laws. Now, their supporters are really upset with this. And the third question, is European politics becoming a lot less tribal? What do you think? Do get in touch and let us know. We'll be right back after a short break. Back to Raw Politics, your call. Just to remind our viewers, the questions that we're asking is European politics becoming less tribal? This is based on a study by the European Council on Foreign Relations. They found they were trying to bust myths in the EU in relation to the election. So our question is European politics becoming less tribal? What do you think? Second question, does Vox deserve a place in the debate? Because they were banned from joining a televised debate with the other main parties because of electoral rules. But should they be included? Should they be given a platform? And third question we're asking you, would you be a whistleblower now that there's a new EU legislation that protects whistleblowers, in fact, from retaliation, and people can now report from outside directly outside their companies to authorities or the media? Would you be a whistleblower? All right, we were discussing that earlier before we went on a break. So I'll just read one more comment on this topic. Stanislav Drastic says the European Parliament overwhelmingly voted for rules aimed at protecting whistleblowers from reprisals. However, open questions remain in practice. Will this new social movement seem trustworthy enough to reveal big cases? And will it be backed by national parliaments? I guess we'll have to see whether it will be backed by national parliaments. All right, let's move on to another question. Does Vox deserve a place in the debate? This is the Spanish party that made headway in Andalusia in the local elections, and the electoral board said that they can't join the national debate with the main parties because they didn't meet, they don't have a seat in parliament, and they didn't meet the proportional representation in terms of votes. Do you agree with this? This is a law, and clearly the optics, though, of what it means for people. Oh, you're taking away a platform from a starting movement that is gaining ground with people. What do you think?
In the end, it seems that they have more media space being not accepted than if they would have been there smoothly, nobody making a number. So this is one tactic also of the right-wing populists across Europe, that they cause the kind of problems, they raise them, and then suddenly we're all talking about Vox. I would be curious to see how people are doing, how my party, Sanchez's party, is doing there, what are they talking about the people's life and so. But now we end up talking about only the race, or is it 8 or 10%? So that is the difficulty. I don't know the electoral law of Spain. Is it followed now or not?
All right, let's bring in a caller. We have Gary from Berkshire. Thanks for joining us, Gary, on the program. So what do you think? Do you think Vox deserves a place in the debate?
Well, look, first of all, I think the viewpoint that Vox has, for me at least, is really rather repugnant. I find their stance on a number of issues is not in keeping with the mainstream. That said, they must have a place for the debate. If we start to choose which parties or which voices we want to listen to, or we want to publicise it in elections, and exclude some parties, are we not removing ourselves from this thing called democracy?
Well, even if it is in the law, because the Electoral Board quoted it is because of the legal requirement, the legal criteria that they did not meet. I mean, that is the reason why they can't join the debate.
But that actually then creates a situation that the law is discriminating against someone who has a view that we don't like. I think if we looked at these individual parties...
I think it applies to all parties, though. I think it applies to all parties. And I think the issue might be here, what about for smaller parties? How do they get in on the debate with the more established parties?
I think you're quite correct with the law does apply to all parties, but what it still does is discriminate against parties in smaller parts or particular parts of Europe. If we were to look at Vox as an example, where we ban Vox, we should be banning the likes of UKIP. Or we should be banning some of these far-right parties that are creeping up in the more eastern fringes of Europe.
I will put it to our MEPs, because I think when we talk about the legal requirements here in Spain, there were other smaller parties that wanted to take part in the debate. So it's not just Vox. And the thing is, Vox is very controversial with their point of view. So I think the question where we want to go here is, what about smaller parties that are gaining ground locally and on the ground, but they can't take part in the bigger debates with established parties because of this law?
Well, and it is unfair, but on the other hand, like here in the European Parliament, we use the don't method. The bigger groups get more than smaller groups. And I myself personally have been having problem with that law in Estonia, because they say you cannot join the debate of top numbers in the national television because you are not a party. Even though on my good days, when I'm in good shape, I can be bigger than any kind of party. So basically, it is a dilemma, but on the other hand, if you have like 32 people for half an hour in a studio, doesn't make much sense as well. So you have to group somehow. But principle of how I understand it, if I were a king of Spain, which unfortunately I am not, I would put this Vox to the box immediately because they are so stupid. But in democracy, stupidity has a right to be exposed.
All right, Gary, you wanted to jump in. Gary, go ahead.
Yes, please. And actually, your MEP there from Estonia has just made the point. These far-right parties are, I don't want to use the word stupid, but some of their argument is actually, or the majority of their argument is really debatable. They will publish their arguments for all to see. And hopefully, by the stupidity that they bring with their argument, it actually excludes them automatically from the debate, because their moral compass is off-centre. Their viewpoints don't necessarily meet the mainstream. But to come on the debate section, you're quite right. Having a number of parties in a debate, it doesn't make sense. We end up with squabbling between them all.
But, you know, there is free speech too, Gary. I mean, whether or not we agree with what someone is saying, there is the right for them. I mean, there is free speech. There is a line, but there is free speech.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you don't...
Yes, absolutely. In free speech, as we have, we must defend that, even if the message is repugnant.
Okay, well, there you go. Mia Petra, go ahead.
We just had our national elections last Sunday, so the public television had many shows, some with the bigger parties, only the kind of prominent prime minister parties, but then they also had one night for the smaller parties, so each party who set candidates for the national parliament had their TV time. They were not part of every show, because it's not very influential to have the show of 12 countries, 12 parties, but you had like the parliamentary parties, that was like an 8, not the ones with the one single member. Then you had it was quite nice to see those very tiny parties, the feminist party, the communist party, or they were 2, but they never get any seats. Then you have a chance at least to follow.
Sure.
There are some people behind these ideas, and at least you can have a fair share. So that is also one way to do it. But it's not that if you're big in the opinion polls because you never had reached the point yet, but then at least give a freedom of speech and people the chance to really see how these people, whether they are stupid or not.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, and it is a question of taste, of course.
but also what one of our MEPs earlier, Ignacio Corral, was saying, well, there's the internet. If you can't join in those big platforms, why not go to the internet? But you see this as a solution? This is the only way for smaller parties to get in on the discussion, get in on the debate?
Well, you mentioned the internet, and technically no one has any limits to get the message through. Either you are anti-vaccine or whatever, you can promote it with tremendous speed via social media. The question probably arises when we have a public broadcaster, like BBC or something like that. And then again, the taxpayers are paying, so you need to treat everybody equally, and it's a complicated one.
Right.
But technically, no one's message
Because
is
there
really
is,
blocked
yeah,
nowadays.
there is the internet and social media. All right, let's bring in a caller from Pontevedra in Spain. Edward, you wanted to join in on this conversation. So does Vox deserve a place in the debate?
It is true that the law tries to be fair with those parties that are already within Parliament. And of course, that means that they will be left out. However, it isn't fair when it comes to freedom of speech, and it will backfire because Vox won't be in the debate, and people will be able to see other parties just, going at each other's throats, and most will be wondering, hey, what would Vox say in this case? And of course, that will be probably backfiring, I think.
So would this actually, as Edward was pointing out, be playing into the hands of a party like Vox, that they can use this and say, look, they didn't include us?
Yeah, probably.
That's already the reaction that we saw from the leader of
probably
Vox.
it will play like that. But I had a privilege to watch the court case in Madrid a few weeks ago. There were Catalan politicians, and my former desk mate, Raúl Romeva included, are in trial for doing something against the Spanish constitution, but on the other hand, doing something upon their political mandate. And then I discovered there was a sort of interesting procedure like accusa popolare or something. And the only guy who was there was a Vox guy who wasted most of the time. The judge always said, ultima pregunta. He never gave ultima
Last
pregunta. He was
question, last
just
question, yeah.
campaigning there. So give them a chance and they will fail.
Okay, well, there you go. What do you think, Mia Petra?
Yes, I think giving the fair treatment for everyone on the democracy is important, but at the same time be quite clear on the rules of the rule of law, the principality of the human rights, and set the limits, which can be then done on the TV show and remind the laws and principles of the Spain as a country as well.
All right. First, thank you to Edward from Pontevedra for calling there. Do you think we still, in this age of your message, you said your message can get across in any which way. Do we need these TV debates anymore these days? Does it, people actually engage in that?
Actually, I think we need more direct TV shows without filtering or kind of thinking that only having the social media as a channel, that we know the algorithms form the blocks or tribes to be
like
more
an echo
and more
chamber,
with
yeah.
other. As I see my Facebook or my Twitter, I see the same faces all the time, and I have like full 5,000 friends. So then I stick up with the most social democratic friends, and somewhat when I once liked them, and so then I don't see any other. Or then people just get along with others well. So it is quite fair to have the straight. Even better is to have a face-to-face contact on the marketplace.
Indrek was disagreeing,
but this is
I don't
like
know
the
if you were
second best
disagreeing,
solution.
but-
No,
Okay, make a quick point because we have to
a
go.
very quick point. I have an idealistic approach. I am looking for the times where the editors, educated, impartial editors, are in between of sorting the information. I'm looking forward to have a good old Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung instead of million tweets by Donald Trump.
All right. Well, there you go. Okay, I will read a comment before we go. We have Kevin Yule. I hope I said that correctly. He said, I would say that it is definitely not attempting honesty. Vox was denied a place at national debates according to Spanish electoral rules that awards places on the basis of showing at the last election, not banned. Well, he must know that. That's what Kevin Ewell was saying there. All right, we will be back after a short break. Just to remind you very quickly before we go, the questions we're asking you: would you want to be a whistleblower? Does Vox, the party in Spain, deserve a place in the debate? And is European politics becoming less tribal? And you know how to get in touch. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. We are live in Strasbourg, the last week, in fact, in Strasbourg before the European elections. All right, just to remind you of the questions we're asking you. Would you be a whistleblower? That's after the EU Parliament here just passed a law to protect whistleblowers. So whistleblowers can now go directly to authorities or to the media. And second, does Vox, the party in Spain, deserve a place in the debate? They were banned from joining a televised debate because they didn't meet the electoral criteria to be part of that debate. Now, is European politics becoming less tribal? That is the third question we're asking you, because with the gains that we're seeing with populist parties in local elections, it would be easy to assume that voters are actually picking based on tribes. Are you are you pro-left or pro-Brexit, anti-Brexit, left, right, pro-immigration, anti-immigration? We have all this rhetoric that we're seeing. So is, in fact, Europe becoming a lot less tribal? Because this was seen in a study as actually a myth, the fact that European voters are voting based on tribalism, because 97 million votes are still up for grabs. That's still a lot of swing voters to convince in the upcoming European elections. So do you think, are we really moving away from more identity politics of what I just mentioned, of where you identify yourself with? Mia Petra.
I have like the national elections of Finland in my mind. And
exactly. I mean,
we didn't have it
like
first time in the Finnish history, in more than 100 years of the national parliament elections, we have no party crossing 20%. So it's very even. We were the biggest social democrats, but then very close each other, 3-4 parties. So it used to be more swing for one being big one. And then we see the same in many countries, that difficulties to form governments when you need a coalition governments because they are more even. So on that sense, it's not that clear anymore that you only have like one-dimensional left-right. You have like a pro-European, anti-European, then you have like European criticism that you want to make Europe more taking care of the people's social needs.
I mean, I think
and all that. So you have
for Finland
a mixture.
in particular, you had climate change that was used as a very emotive topic there. So are you, this is it pitting the elite against the working class? That's another form of tribalism. Oh, I belong to the working class, and therefore this is how I feel, and this is how I will vote. Yeah. So do you feel that, based on the Finland example, that in fact tribalism is very much there?
It is, but it's maybe, if the tribalism is actually same than the parties, if I can say the working class then used to vote for the left, and then the rich people used to vote for the right, and then you have suddenly like the Greens, they are not that clear because they have an other identity. No, it's very clear that you have the very high ambitions on the climate change, and now we want it in the Finnish parliament elections. We were very clear that we need to stop the global warming. Then of course some competitors like saying that you will try to push the bill for the ordinary, hardworking families. We said, no, we will do it in a better way to change the markets. And so yes, there are so many new things, the globalization, European integration, climate change. It doesn't fit only in the left, right? And then people are quite free to choose nowadays. They do the decision to vote last minute, and then they really pick up with the one.
Well, I think in a way this tribalism is over. Social democracy has accomplished its mission. In a way, we don't have children exploited in coal mines like Charles Dickens' times, and there are not tens of thousands of people going into the Volkswagen factories. So to say, the labor as a class has gradually disappeared. But for all the rights they got, they owe a thank you to social democracy, of course. But the thing about tribalism is, if we look at France, what did Emmanuel Macron say? I'm not left, I'm not right, because it's old-fashioned.
But people are starting to identify with new groupings, maybe not the left and the right anymore.
Right, and nowadays it's very easy to pick up one issue and identify yourself.
Right, exactly.
I'm a vegan, so the rest is not there. I hate them, but it shouldn't be like that. We should take the whole picture. It is not like, okay, he's a good economist, but otherwise he's a Catholic. I don't like him. I mean, you should.
So you think that the people who probably speak the loudest are the ones who are, pushing out this kind of populist rhetoric, and therefore we think tribalism is very much alive in Europe, but in reality it is not the case.
It isn't, because people, for instance, in my country, who argue that the most important issue is to ban the abortion. And we stand for that. It's the most important. Some people might identify themselves with that, but then they look at the other issues, what they say about taxes or about foreign policy or environment or climate change. They say, no. These guys are crazy. I cannot identify myself with that. And then it's a sort of compartmentalization of issues, that if you are focused and fixed to only one issue, be it tax, be it food, be it trade, or be it whatsoever, you already lost, because you don't pay attention to other things. But biodiversity in political, cultural sense is far more important. You have to see why the climate change is happening. It's not because of a labor or the capitalist.
But people are latching onto it, and it is becoming such an emotive topic, where it's just specifically climate change, and it's happening with a lot of other issues as well. All right, we will leave it there for now. Let us go to a short break, just reminding you to call in and get in touch with us. The questions we're asking: would you be a whistleblower? Does Vox deserve a place in the debate? And is European politics becoming a lot less tribal? Don't go away. Welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. We are live from Strasbourg, and this is our last week in Strasbourg before the European elections and the new parliament comes into their positions and their posts. So I'd like to ask our MEPs, actually, what legislation, or what is your proudest moment that this parliament was able to deliver?
Personally, it was for me. I was the rapporteur on the roaming charges abolishment. So now we can. I'm very happy with that one. Quite many are, and then even good news that the 15th of May, also phoning from your phone number to your friend in another EU country, not only when you're traveling, will be less pricey, not €0, but there will be less pricey to call a friend, like an international phone call.
Oh, well, that's
so
great news.
That is a good news. But in general, I must say that this term is the brace for the taking climate change as important issue as it is. So we just started with the energy union, a lot of good legislation there, the cars, emissions, and a lot of issues have been reached, and we have to continue that even to the next term.
What about you, Indrek?
Well, I applauded to Mia Petra's efforts in about what she has done, and we have done many good things about climate change. For me personally, just to pick out of thousands of votes, for me personally, the fight for stopping the annual clock change has been the most important issue. And I'm absolutely amazed and surprised how the Council and the Commission cannot get this easiest thing done. And there still seem to be people involved in Commission who thinks that by manipulating the watch, we can create more light in the sun.
I mean, this certainly got people's attention. Like, really changing the time? All right, but what about on the opposite side? What was a failure of this parliament that it was not able to deliver now that it's ending?
Maybe the immigration question, as we talk about the external borders and we talk about how to treat the people. So in general, there are like many things that we all are aware of, that when it's not controlled, it's not good. And then we want to control it. Then you don't want to create a system, because that would sound like a federalistic system, that we bear the burden together or we make the rules together. So that was a disappointment. It was not the parliament. Parliament was like having even extra session to make it quickly after Commission proposal, but then the Council was stick up and couldn't deliver.
All right. Well, before we go, we're running out of time. We do have time for our Raw Politics Your Call last word. All right, so we are talking, so one of the topics that we were talking about today is, would you be a whistleblower? So there was a whistleblowing protection directive. So here is from Michael Moore, documentary filmmaker. He said that there's at least one disgruntled person in every workplace, and at least double that number with a conscience. Hard as they try, they simply can't turn their heads away from an injustice when they see one taking place. That was from Michael Moore. He is a documentary filmmaker. All right, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we will see you again soon. Have a good evening.